Ole Miss is on a recruiting heater. We bring in Sam Hutchens from the Clarion Ledger to talk all about it. Plus, what's the correct way to eat a hot dog? We'll look into all of that here on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Steven Willis, host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We'll be joined by Sam Hutchens, the beat writer from the Clarion Ledger on Ole Miss in just a moment. But first, I do want to remind you to make Ole Miss, Locked On Ole Miss, your first listen every day. Thank you for doing that. For your second listen, check out the Portal Podcast with Brian Smith. And also give us a like, a comment, a subscribe. It helps keep this channel free, and free means fun. And fun means you keep coming back. And right now we could use a lot of it. We have Sam Hutchens from the Clarion Ledger. You know, Sam, Ole Miss is on a bit of a recruiting heater. On Wednesday night, I had the Florida football scout, Locked On's recruiting expert on Landon Barnes. This is a guy that had an offer from absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
Ole Miss is legitimately like getting Deuce Gerald's away from signing the best defensive line class that they've ever signed.
Whew. Yeah, heater, 2 in 2 days, 2 4-stars. I say that qualifies for just about anyone in the country. You know, you'll snatch up any and every 4-star you can ever get. But yeah, Barnes. I mean, the thing that jumps out to me and everyone else reading about Barnes is that he chose over Ohio State, and Ohio State was after him pretty hard, and to out recruit the people that can flash the hardware and the defending national champions. You know, I think Washington was after Barnes too, but yeah, that was an impressive get to me, you know, kind of on the upper echelon of 4-stars a little bit.
Yeah, and he played at Duncanville High School in Texas, which has an argument to be the best public school in the entire country. Those guys dominant. Randall Joyner is from there. He played ball at SMU. He is like Mr. Fix-It when it comes to recruiting in the Dallas area. He deserves all of the credit for this, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in my story, of course, you know, you just write Lane Kiffin snatched him up. It's never truly as simple as, oh, Lane Kiffin is getting anyone and every one of these guys. And of course, Lane would tell you that himself, this staff that he's assembled. And yeah, and I thought, man, there's been some success in Texas pass rushers recently on this team. And anytime you can dip down into the wealth of Texas, you know, I'm a big believer in Beast Texas recruits, the guys out east. They call it Beast Texas. Those DFW guys, anyone you can dip out on there, that's a big get.
Yeah, and if you look at it, I like making comps of previous things. And Ole Miss already has a commitment from the top linebacker in the country in Isaiah Williams. And he reminds you a lot of Suntaran Perkins when you watch him on film. Now they have a guy that reminds you a lot of Princely Amon-Mielet. It's like Pete Golding is recreating that 2024 defense from high school recruits. And 3 years ago, neither one of those were possible.
No. It's actually that's been. I've thought about that too. It's Golding's kind of been doing this for long enough, and I guess you could point to Ole Miss as a whole, like since COVID or whenever you want to draw the line. But you're starting to get to the point where you're not having to convince these guys without having anything to point to. You can definitely point to, hey, look at Princely, look at Suntaran and what these guys have done and doing. You're now at the point where you're just replacing and building on past precedent instead of having to, kind of build an Oxford team, build an Ole Miss team from the roots a little bit. So I guess this is, I mean, you know more about it than me, Steven, but this is kind of when it gets a little easier, right? Is you're not having to convince the first wave of great players to come. You're just having to convince people to fill the ranks from great players that have left.
I think that the trajectory Ole Miss is on is the trajectory that Clemson was on in the 2000s. And Ole Miss, we don't know where they are in that evolution. But as they get building and building and building, eventually they got the quarterback and the running back and the wide receivers and the defense that got them over the top. But it was a process. It was like a 10-year process. I remember them getting beat by 60 points in an Orange Bowl after winning 9 games.
Yes.
That Clemson team was early in the build. They got to the late build, but Dabo Swinney flipped all of that over. I think Lane Kiffin's doing the same thing at Ole Miss.
Who is you bring up that game? I forget the other team that was in that Clemson game.
West Virginia.
It was West Virginia. I knew it was old school. Yeah, Big 12, because that, to me, I remember someone had pointed that out as they're like, hey, this was kind of a turning point in college football a little bit. And, with obviously a dynasty that, was in the making there, and what that all looked like, but how it takes the steps you have to go to, build and build and build and actually get to a point where you're dominating those games. But yeah, it's interesting to me. If you bought stock in Ole Miss right when Lane came, you are a very thrilled customer right now.
Yeah, 3 10-win seasons out of the last 4 years. The one year that they didn't win 10 games, they started out 8-0 and undefeated, or 7-0 and undefeated. They just had a poor close to the season. If Ole Miss has a good year, and they legitimately could, like the Locked On SEC, Chris Gordy did a story, got to interview Austin Simmons at the Manning Passing Academy.
Sure.
Austin Simmons literally said, we're going to dominate this year. Like, nobody's making a big deal out of that story, but that was straight out of the starting quarterback's mouth. And I'm all for a little South Florida swagger. I understand it. I know that somebody from Pahokee can talk. Everybody gets lost in the fact that he graduated high school 2 years early and he's already graduated from. Everybody gets lost in the fact that he is still from South Florida, the home of Deion Sanders. So Austin Simmons, if he is, locked in, if that goes on, I think that becomes a big story. I love the confidence. I love that he's there, but I love that South Florida swagger kind of like permeating the Ole Miss locker room this early in the season.
I think back, swagger has really served this university well, especially from the quarterback position. There's precedent. Dart had an absolute swagger that I think we could very well see take over the NFL if he plays his cards right in New York. But, Matt Corral had a swagger. There's been precedent of swagger with this university that I think Simmons is prepared for. If he has a monster year, which I'm not guaranteeing, but from what I've seen is certainly within the realm of possibility, he could go from, kind of the guy that not everyone nationally knows about to one of the very top echelon guys in college football that everyone knows about.
Yeah, they asked him, it's like, what do you want Ole Miss fans to realize about you this year? And Austin Simmons just said straight to his face, I want you to know that what you saw in the Georgia game, I can do a lot more. And that it was exactly his answer to that. It's like, man, this guy's just oozing confidence at the moment. Anyway, Sam Hutchens, when we come back, he's got his inaugural SEC Media Days, and I'm pretty excited to see where he ends up there. All right, I do want to tell you about Game Time. We've all been there, logging in early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with killer last-minute deals. Listen, if you are tired of scrolling and trying to get those concert tickets, Game Time Zone Deals, they actually pick the best seat in the section for you. Check that out. And also, if you ever wonder what your seat view will look like before you buy, they can do that too. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're back with Sam Hutchens, and this is your first SEC Media Days. And the irony of this is, for the first time, multiple people I've talked to have been turned down for credentials for SEC Media Days. for the longest time with SEC Media Days, maybe that was when it was at the Winfrey in Birmingham.
Sure.
It was, hey, we had 1,300 credentialed media, and it was like, yeah, it was like Bob's blog,
Right.
asking a question, what's going on. So they've gotten a little bit tighter, maybe because it's at the College Football Hall of Fame. What are your expectations going into SEC Media Days?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I know I believe it's just going to be crazy in general in terms of Atlanta. Someone told me I hate to go on the number one Ole Miss podcast I believe by ratings and say something I don't know for sure, but someone told me that Beyonce has a concert in Atlanta that weekend.
Ooh.
And the MLB draft is going to be there that weekend.
Yes, that is All-Star Game weekend.
So
All-Star Game.
yeah, so traffic, traffic in Atlanta is nuts, a little period, but I think it'll be crazy just in general there. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I've been to plenty of Big 12 media days, but never an SEC one. So it's 4 days. It'll be kind of equal parts a circus and like a regular business conference, as all media days are. But I wonder, Steven, what type of mood Lane will be. And I know, just as a person, it's like, oh, that's really tough he lost his father right before the last media day. And now his mother, passed away not too long ago. So I'll be interested to see what kind of mood he's in and how introspective he is about those moments or looking forward to this season.
It would be really interesting. I'm sure the question of the day at SEC Media Days, if some random conference realignment thing doesn't break right before SEC Media Days like it has.
Good possibility.
Yeah. But they're going to talk about the playoff, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Because Tony Petitti is making rounds. He's going to the Joel Klatt show, trying to stump for his 4-4-2-2-1-3 thing that the Big Ten's all in on. I'm assuming there's at least going to be a plant in the big room at SEC Media Days whose job is to ask the question about the playoff to every single coach.
That's a good question. Do you think those coaches, and granted, everyone has different levels of openness to that sort of thing, but you think those coaches will give pretty legitimate answers or no? Because I expect every coach has thought about it and every coach has an angle, whether you're kind of one that would benefit from, certain scenarios, this scenario or that scenario. I hope we get some legitimate answers because I think you're right, Steven. That's a question you can and should ask just about every coach.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, it's kind of a trick question because if you ask the SEC coaches, they want it to be the 5-11 model because in the 5-11 model, there's going to be 7 SEC teams that populate that every single year. So whenever you're locked into 4, 7's greater than 4. So obviously they would be in favor of that. The fans, the hard part is going to be getting them a voice of what's going on because I've talked with you about it. The SEC championship game Saturday and Big Ten championship game Saturday having triple headers. Basically one can be Saturday, one can be Sunday, and you set up the playoff. I mean, it would be must-see television, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the simple answer at the end of the day is with the 5 model. It's like, well, Shane Beamer, he'll say yes because he would have gotten in last year with that model. If you get 7 teams in, Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss would have got in last year. Of course, he'll say yes. And that's if that's the whole goal at the start of the year is to make the CFP. So yeah, what shot do you give that, Steven, of passing or being ratified?
Well, the Big Ten is really dug in. So there's going to have to be concessions to do anything because all that has to happen, of course, is the Big Ten and the SEC agree.
No one else matters.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. They've had conversations with the other conference. All they have to do is agree. But the Big Ten is completely dug in. Is the Big Ten willing to be the bad guy and allow the SEC to be the good guy, sort of? They blew up the Pac-12. I mean, the Big Ten seems to be willing to play that role. So I am curious where it's going to end up. I think the December is the deadline before the start of the next playoff.
Okay.
Hopefully at some point in this season that they come up with an answer of it. I am a big proponent of the 4-4-2-2-1-3. I think that it's just good football. There's more good football. It takes the leadership out of a corrupt committee and allows the conference just to assign their bids of what's going on. The same teams that were going to make the playoffs are going to make the playoffs anyway. And college football's always had a quirky national championship system.
I sort of think any scenario. I mean, I love the differences between college football and the NFL, but you mentioned corrupt in the committee. I think those two C words are pretty strongly linked, just in terms of like, they're just biased. They're all people with their own interests and stuff up there. Of course, it's built in, but I think a move toward the NFL system where everything's, penciled in and it's more like everyone knows exactly what they need to do at the start of the season instead of just, hey, finish at the end of the year and you'll have these 12 people in a hotel eating nachos, sort everyone out. I think that's probably what we move to, short-term or long-term, a more NFL model of it's guaranteed black and white what's happening here.
Yeah, there's people on the committee that get bonuses in their contract with their home school for teams in their conference going to the playoff. And people are going to try and tell me that this is not a corrupt system.
The most disingenuous thought in any sort of committee, it was a deal in baseball too, is like, oh, when the person who's involved, when their team, when that committee representative, when his or her team is being discussed, he'll leave the room. That's like, what? So you're not just going to say anything when you come back? Like, you're supposed to get dinner with that guy. You're supposed to get a steak in 3 hours and you got to sit next to him. That's like, when mom tells you to do the dishes and you're like, I don't need to do them because she's not here. It's like, well, she's going to come back and see the sink is full. You got to take care of them. So,
yeah, but mom was out of the room whenever we decided not to do the sink.
Yeah, it's like, come on.
So there's not going to be repercussions. Like it literally cost a person money by having not enough Big Ten teams get into the playoff. Yeah. Like if Indiana would not have gotten in I think it was Manuel from Michigan, he would not have gotten a bonus from the Big Ten for Big Ten teams getting in.
Yeah, it's like you hate to call anyone corrupt. I probably shouldn't throw that around, but the system is built to breed corruption and bias.
Yeah,
that's not ideal.
Everybody has to have an opinion on something. There's nobody that has no opinion of what's going on. And whenever that happens, extra things can seep in and make stuff happen. Anyway, when we come back, we're going to talk to Sam about the correct way to eat a hot dog. Stick around. All right, Sam, this is, it's July 4th. Everybody's having cookouts either today or tomorrow. I'm having actually my cookout tomorrow.
Nice.
But there's many different ways to eat a hot dog. I'm not talking about the form, like the people that eat a hot dog in the middle like that is a psychopath. Eat it like an ear of corn. I'm not talking about that. What is the correct way to eat a hot dog?
Hopefully this segment doesn't get too contentious, Steven. We're still friends, right? Regardless of what's said here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have one pretty strong requirement. Not everyone will be on board with me, but I am a huge believer in mustard. I'm a big mustard guy. And lately I've actually become a pickles guy too. So I don't know what it is. If you give me ketchup, mustard, and pickles, I will go, I guess, relish and mustard. I'm take or leave the ketchup. But if you had to give me one condiment on, a desert islander to last my whole cookout, I would go with the mustard. That's my favorite.
I think mustard and pickles is an absolute must when it comes to a hot dog, like a dill relish or a sweet relish. That's what I mean. So mustard and that, fantastic. I put ketchup on a hot dog. I'm the psychopath that does that as well, but I do it with mustard, and mustard is usually the dominant thing, the sweetness of a ketchup. I just like that.
And I go fully charred. Like I'm a big char guy. Is that how you cook them too, or do you like a little less?
I like them any way I can get. I love hot dogs.
Okay.
Literally love it. We have a hot dog toaster in our house.
Oh, no way.
To where you can put the buns on the other side and two things of the wieners and just put it down, and 2 minutes later it's done. Yeah, I love hot dogs.
Let me ask you this. Do you watch the Nathan's 4th of July contest with Joey Chestnut? Because that could ruin your love of hot dogs, I feel like.
Yeah. That's one of those things. I do not watch that. That's one of the things. Water on bread itself is gross to me.
Yeah. I saw a clip of Joey Chestnut the other day talking about, like how many could you down? Of course, he's got to have the same conversation every year, but he's like, it has to be the perfect conditions of if it's too windy, the hot dogs will get cooled down faster and it becomes harder to get down. But if it's too hot, the buns will get, soggy. And I'm like, Joey, that's too much. So yeah, I usually don't watch that either, just because if I have to watch someone eat 70 hot dogs, it becomes a little harder to go eat 2 or 3 myself, I feel like.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where if you're eating 3 hot dogs, there's repercussions of that as well. But I think July 4th is a good time. You have fun. Me and my wife have matching Suck It England shirts with a George Washington wearing shades that we'll wear around on July 4th.
That's great.
One of my favorite commercials is somebody playing George Washington driving a Dodge Challenger.
Yes.
Around. July 4th is a fun holiday. I have a dog that has developed a little bit of a fear of loud noises, so I worry about fireworks tomorrow night, but we'll see exactly how that goes, honestly.
Yeah. I've done it all. I've had, going up to my cousins in Kansas when we were younger, and we'd, buy a pretty decent haul and have the whole neighborhood over at that house and light them off ourselves. And then we had, back in Oklahoma where I used to live, our neighbor would pool together with the entire fire department. A little ironic that the fire department is one of the biggest partakers, but we loved it because they'd bring up 2 trailers and rig it up with their Cobra automated firing system, and there'd be 100 people watching that. So yeah, we've done the smaller shows or the big show over the lake. I just love it. Yeah, it's a great time.
I live probably a mile away from Legoland in Winter Haven, Florida. So whenever they do their fireworks, all I have to do is go out in the front yard and I get the whole fireworks show every Saturday night that they do it. And that is pretty cool. Now, I will say that the lady across the street says her sister lives right next door to Legoland, and she's had to buy windows twice because fireworks have broken the windows. So there is a good and a bad, but yeah, we get a pretty good show every time they do that.
Legos are expensive. They should try to comp those.
They
got enough money. I've spent enough myself.
I think Legoland has a Lego swap, honestly, to where you can go. It's kind of like the pin thing at Disney.
Oh, sure.
So if it's rare Legos, if you go there, they might have one available because you can just drop them off, and it's like give a penny and take a penny type deal. So yeah, it's pretty good. It's not for adults. Do not go if you do not have kids, because you will not be able to ride anything and you're just walking around in Central Florida getting hot.
Yeah, that's not the move. Not here or anywhere. That's the whole goal of 4th of July, is to avoid the heat.
Yes, absolutely. Anyway, Sam, what do you got going on at the Clarion Ledger, man?
Well, yeah, gearing up for SEC Media Day, so looking forward for that. I'm kind of still writing off the Manning Passing Academy, which mentioned that earlier, but I was down there and got to do some stuff there. And, we get off the 4th of July too. So another weekend, guys like you and me appreciate this weekend, Steven, it's kind of a lighter week. We can take a breather. So eating some hot dogs with mustard and relish, I guess.
Exactly. I hope you have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you next week before you head over to SEC Media Days.
Sounds good. Talk then.